Hey there, you're watching Wildflower Video Tips. I'm Lindsay Moe, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your camera and lights to create recipe videos. The way you set up your cameras and lights when you're creating recipe videos is going to be super specific to what kind of gear you have. I'm going to show you what I'm using and how I set it up, and I'll try cover any changes you might want to make if you have a different kind of gear, but really you just want to play around with it and see what works for you. When I get a new piece of equipment, I will usually spend about an hour just moving things around, trying new things, and seeing what looks best. So let's dive in. The first thing we're going to set up is the lights. I have two different kinds of lights, and I have another video all about my gear that I just shared, and you can go back and watch that if you want to get a more detailed idea of what I'm using. But basically, I set up one key light right across from where I'm standing, and I treat that kind of like a window. If you were shooting in natural light, I love natural light for recipe videos. I don't have a great spot for it in my house, but basically I'm using this light in place of a window. So if you were shooting in natural light, this is where your window would go. I also set up a fill light off to the side with the same kind of light, and this just kind of helps fill in the shadows. You want to make sure you're watching out for shadows. Where you set up your lights will depend on where your tripod is or whatever kind of stand you're using for your camera, so just keep an eye on that. One thing you want to make sure is that you turn off any ambient light in your house when you're shooting. I have my overhead lights on now just to show you how I'm setting up my equipment, but I will definitely turn these off and just use the video lights while I'm shooting. You also want to be really careful about what you are wearing when you're shooting video. I know this isn't exactly about light or camera placement, but it's more about you and where you are in relation to the video you're creating. And this is just important because if you're wearing a bright color, it can reflect or cast a strange light on your food or your equipment, maybe your pots and pans or a spoon. And wearing neutral colors like white or black, gray, brown maybe will just help make sure that you blend in to the background. I also have these two lights that I set up off to the side that are pointing directly at the ceiling. This also helps fill in some of the shadows and creates a more natural, soft glow around the scene. I find it really helps balance out the kind of green hue of these other lights, and it just creates more of like a soft daylight look. If you don't have this many lights, the two lights would be just fine, or even one light, and I have used a bounce card or a mirror or shot near a window just to help fill in any other light needed. When it comes to setting up your camera, if you only have one camera, I recommend going top down if you're doing a hands and pans style video. This is just fine. You don't have to cut in between two different camera angles, although I do like the look of that. It's not entirely necessary. I'm using this overhead stand, which screws my camera into it and holds it steady overhead. I have also used my tripod, which has an articulating arm to hold it over the food. I find that this creates more shadows with my lights, so that's why I bought this overhead stand. But if you only have a tripod, that definitely works. I definitely recommend the articulating arm, although you might be able to find one with a head that will turn 90 degrees so it can point directly down. The side angle shot gets a little more complicated. I set up a camera on my tripod off to the side, and I don't have two zoom lenses. I like to use my zoom lens for my overhead shot, but I use my 50mm fixed lens on the side angle, and this matters because I need to position the actual camera in a way that frames the shot well instead of being able to rely on zooming in. So what I've done is I will sometimes set this across from me where I'm working and just angle it down so you're getting kind of a shot straight on to me, but more just the food. And I have also set this up on the same side that I'm working on so that it's across from the light. This helps create a really nice, soft glow of light behind it. You do want to make sure it's not too shadowy. And you want to make sure that the way you're angling your camera doesn't catch any of your equipment in the background. This can be kind of difficult depending on how big of a table you're working on or what your other equipment like your lights look like. So just keep in mind to keep an eye on how you're framing things and what might be in the background. I currently shoot on this table because it's a nice height for me, but I have also shot on the floor, which I recommend if you're working with a tripod because it can be difficult to adjust the legs and keep everything kind of overhead nicely. I also highly recommend either a flip out screen on your camera or a monitor where you can see what you're working on. I went a long time without either of these and it was a lot of work. It was super frustrating. I was constantly having to climb up and check my focus and my exposure and all these things and just make sure everything was right, and it was super difficult. So it's definitely worth it to invest in a monitor or a flip out screen. That's it. I hope this helps you when setting up your camera and your lights. Like I said, it's going to be super different for everybody depending on what you're using. If you have any questions or you want any tips, you want to share your setup and see what other people are doing, head over to our Facebook group, which I have linked down below, and I would love to see it and talk about it with you there. If you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe right below here so you never miss another video. I am here every Tuesday with a new tip. Thanks again so much for being here. We'll see you next time.